You've spent a lifetime in academics. When you came on before, we detailed your rise, at the most elite institutions like Vanderbilt. And you have to, if you're going to go that route, write a lot. You have to get published, which you did. And so how did you find out that somebody else who's gotten published, though not as prolifically as you have, did it in part by allegedly copying and stealing your ideas and words? And that would be Claudine Gay, the one-time president of Harvard.
Yes, and before I was at Vanderbilt, I was tenured at Princeton, early tenure, and my prize-winning first book, Black Faces, Black Interests, The Representation of African Americans in Congress, was the book that was plagiarized. And I found out, along with the rest of the world, on December 10th, 2023, when Dr. Art Laffer gave me a phone call and asked if I had heard that the president of Harvard University had been accused of plagiarizing her dissertation. And then he said, guess who she plagiarized? You. And so he referred me to Christopher Rufo's X page, Twitter. And I went there, I saw the article, and then I started getting phone calls and I read the work. At first I was, shocked. It happened 26 years earlier. Then I was deeply sad because she's a Black woman, I'm a Black woman, and I didn't think it was a good look for Black women. And then that sort of morphed into anger, which is not something that I usually engage in, when Harvard came out and said that it wasn't plagiarism, it was duplicative language without attribution.
Right. And how did you feel about that?
I was angry. And that anger, again, it's not good to be angry. And I gave, I believe, 80 some interviews between December 10th and the middle of January. But I calmed myself down for Christmas. This happened December 10th. I'm angry, but I want to have a good Christmas. I'm a Christian. Calmed myself down, started posting scriptures on X, which I still do, because it was consuming me in a way that was not healthy. But January 2nd, Claudine Gay resigned. She has a letter, I believe, in the New York Times, and she blames racism. And when she blamed racism, then I'm angry all over again. And I called an attorney who had offered to take the case pro bono, and I told him to pursue it. And so it was an attorney from Austin. And then later I moved from him to a paid legal team. And doing all of this, Claudine Gay never reached out to me. I had heard of her while I was at Princeton. I was a hot shot when I was hired, and I got early tenure, got it in 3 years. First book, 3 national prizes. It's been cited by the U.S. Supreme Court. But I started questioning affirmative action in the mid-1990s, and that was not popular with the people who had loved me for my first book. And that was interesting how quickly you can fall out of favor. But I started falling out of favor, and it felt to me that Claudine Gay was being thrown up to me, this brilliant Black woman from Harvard University. And I was not interested that much in what she was doing, and my work moved in a different direction. I had been a congressional scholar. That was how I was tenured. But then I got interested in affirmative action and white nationalism and other issues. So I wasn't paying attention. I stopped attending the conferences. So it was a shock to me to find out that Claudine Gay had sort of built her early career around the theses and arguments of Black faces, Black interests.
Mm-hmm. And many of our audience members may be asking themselves, how can this possibly be? Because you, I think it's fair to say, are a more conservative thinker, maybe heterodox thinker is a better way, and she is a far lefty. So why would she be plagiarizing Carol Swain if, in fact, she did?
Well, I was the hot shot back then, and I was a Democrat up until 2009. But I like to say that I was a Democrat with common sense, because back then, when I started, before Black Faces, Black Interests, and when I did my dissertation, my research question was, is it really true that only Blacks can represent Blacks? And so I studied Black representation in Congress, and I argued that political party was more important than the race of the representative. And I also argued that whites could represent blacks and blacks could represent whites, and that when black candidates lost, it was because of their views and not their race. And at the time I did that study, 40% of the blacks in Congress were represented by, were elected in districts that were majority white on election day when you factored in turnout levels and registration. And so the book, one of the reasons it got a lot of attention is in my concluding chapter, I talked about what would happen to Black power if the Democrats lost control of Congress. And it happened a year after my book was published.
That's so interesting. I love, well, you're bent toward conservative thinking, especially on issues of race, like concluding that it's okay for blacks to be represented by whites and so on. This led to the beginning of your cancellation. We went over that when you came on, like slowly but surely the universities decided maybe you're not all that brilliant. These don't seem like brilliant ideas to them. They'd much rather go with the Claudine Gay, who knocks down those ideas and says all the right things and then keeps getting promoted. And then, even though she's made it to the top of Harvard University, when she comes under fire, along with two white women from other universities who were saying similarly dumb things at those hearings, she blames racism. What did you, your reaction when she decided to blame her problems on that?
Well, I'm not a racist, and I was among the people. There were 47 instances of plagiarism. In the book, I have a side-by-side. There were 5 verbatim concerning my work, but my argument is that she used Black faces, Black interests to set up a straw man. She took one of my conclusions, and her work was designed to counter my work. And so there were verbatim plagiarism, but the bigger theft, I think, was that instead of doing it, like if you or I were going to do a research project and we thought someone was wrong, we would say, Professor Dr. So-and-so argues such and such, they are wrong. And then you lay out their argument, you dissect it, you take it apart. She didn't do that. She tried to avoid citing me. And the places where she did cite me, it was not to give credit for the core of her idea. And so in at least 3 articles, because she never had a major book, I would argue that she drew on my ideas without giving proper attribution. And I learned in this process that under copyright law, the theft of ideas are not protected. The copyright law protects copyrights, but not the theft of ideas. And her lawyer argued that it was de minimis, which she took from me, that it was fair use, and that she had argued the opposite of what I did. And so that was pretty much their position. And then the university itself, they had an attorney, and their attorney said that they were not responsible for the dissertation because ProQuest published it. And but they referred me back to the letter by Neil Roman.
Yeah, but the bottom line is no one took responsibility. She didn't say she was sorry.
No.
She said when she came under fire that these were just mere errors. Nothing was done intentionally. I'm sure that she and Harvard don't act that way when a student gets caught plagiarizing work. You can just say it was a mere error. And, I know when you were thinking about filing this lawsuit, but ultimately decided not to for the reasons you just discussed, you took a look at where Claudine Gay is now, and you reminded me of something too, which is she's actually doing pretty darn well.
She is. Plagiarism isn't a crime or a misdemeanor. It's like an ethical, moral breach. And institutions, whether it was journalistic organizations, or colleges and universities, they used to police that. But when it comes to elite, it's not being policed. Harvard doesn't allow its students to plagiarize. They hold them to a strict standard, except if they get away with it. And so in the case of Claudine Gay, they didn't catch it back when it occurred. And so they defend it now that she's on the faculty. And one of the things that really bothers me is that Claudine Gay, she comes from Haitian aristocracy. She went to Phillips Exeter Academy. She has an undergraduate degree from Stanford. She has the PhD from Harvard. She won 2 prizes for her writings. And so it's a reflection on the elites because they educated her. She was their product. And people like me that come from the other side of the track, there's less interest in me and Roland Fryer, people like us. And Harvard had been accused some time ago of preferring the offspring of immigrants and to native-born Black Americans. And so, I mean, they carefully chose her. They protected her. And as far as I know, she's still earning that $900,000 a year salary.
We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point, as the largest generation is hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a very big problem on our hands. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you a cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold and a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. Text my initials MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.